Chris Steele, why does Jefferson matter to you?
I think that Jefferson is a small town that is at the forefront, not only on a state level, but on a national level of showing why small towns still matter. I think that what we have done as a community to show that a community can thrive without being a suburb, without all of these other disclaimers, that no, there is still potential for small communities to do awesome and amazing things. And I think that is a really powerful thing. And I think that is a something that is lacking on a larger scale, because small town means people know each other. Small town means people who want everyone else to succeed, who want to help each other. And that's something we need more in this world. And I think that Jefferson has set itself apart in how it's gone about creating this thriving, welcoming environment. And so I think that we all really need to do what we can to continue that trend, continue that momentum.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Behind What Matters. I'm Matt Wetrich, Executive Director of Jefferson Matters Main Street. And today we have the one and only Chris Steele here. I love that we coordinated outfits today. That's right on brand for us, mm-hmm. I would say. We're always just in sync and on the ball, and thought about this days ago, I'm sure. Yep. So right. That's the thing.
Black's my thing. Yeah.
A sign of things to come. Yes. Well, Chris, thanks for joining us, and looking to do a little deeper dive on a fun project here in town, the Jeffersonian. So we'll get into that and some of the hows and whys and your perspective as now the lead of said project. But first, tell us a little bit about yourself. Most people know the deal's name and orchard and everything, but tell us a little bit about you and why are you in Jefferson these days and growing up here and all that good stuff.
Yeah, well, I have been back in Jefferson now for 10 years, almost 10 years exactly. I remember we moved back in June of 2016, and I grew up here. So went to school here, graduated all the way back in 2003, and then took off, went to Iowa State, did an engineering degree, and then really wanted to do something different, do something unique. Some might say avoid the real world, but I did. After graduating with an engineering degree at Iowa State, spent a year abroad with Rotary through their ambassadorial fellowship program, and was in Uganda for a year doing a master's degree, but more so there doing service projects and just experiencing what it is and what it's like living in sub-Saharan Africa. And then after that, came back and did 2 years teaching in inner city Kansas City through the Teach for America program. I did another master's, education master's through that, and got to teaching had always been something that was of interest. We have a lot of teachers in our family. I'm married a teacher, and so got to experience that in a very real manner. And so 2 years working with some incredible kids, incredible staff, and experiencing education in certainly a challenging environment, but one where there's a lot of opportunity to do some great things too. And so loved that experience, but knew ultimately that we wanted to get back to Iowa. We wanted to raise a family here in Iowa. And so had a chance to first move back to Ames and took a position with an engineering firm. Modus is the name of the company. Still am a part of Modus now 15 years later, and so work for them on a part-time basis. Small company, and so myself and 5 others are partners there, and about 60 people. And so I'm down in Des Moines once a week still with that. And but the big driver to come home was be part of Deals Orchard and be part of fourth generation to keep that family business going. And so we came back 10 years ago. At that point, we brought our 2 kids. Now there's 3, and so we love being a part of the community. We love being able to raise our kids in this community with the close-knit nature of it. We love just the small town vibe that it has, and how when our kids get dropped off somewhere, like if they need to walk across town to go somewhere else, like guess what? They're probably going to have 2, 3, 4 people drive by who know who they are, and that's a good thing. That's a great thing. And so it's been wonderful being back, and we love it here.
Well, we love having you guys here, and as we're going to learn a little bit more, so involved in the community, and particularly this project of the Jeffersonian. So let's take a quick high-level view at this project, and then I think I've got some other fun, detailed questions, I think, to get into with you. So tell everybody what the project is, where the building is, kind of the time where this seed got planted for you, as we try not to make too many apple tree puns and things here. But so when did you start to get into this project? Where is it? Why? A little timeline and just some perspective on there. And this is a school that you attended. At what age?
So this was my middle school. I was here from 6th grade to 8th grade in the school.
So before we get into the kind of what it is, did you imagine as a middle schooler coming back to be a developer for this project?
No, I did not imagine that. And long after being a middle schooler, and as a young professional, I also did not imagine coming back to be a developer. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, let's hear about the project.
So this is a conversion of the 1920s building. The original was a Proudfoot and Bird building, and so Proudfoot and Bird is the architecture firm. Easily the best-known Iowa architecture firm. They did our county courthouse, and at that same time, they also built out this school building. And so turning it into apartments, repurposing the facility into a present-day purpose for it. The project, the idea of the project started way back in, I'd say probably 2016, 17, 18, that time frame, because when we had moved back, I was in the middle of a school bond initiative. And so this has ties all the way back to building out what is now our high school and career academy. And with that whole process, which was a multi-year process, but the vision then was, how do we create a new present-day facility that will really emphasize creating opportunities for our students? And that turned into our high school, into the career academy. As a part of that, we effectively vacated, decommissioned the then middle school. And so one of the questions was, what happens to that building? It, as anyone in the community knows, right, it's right downtown, a block off of our downtown, very prominent location. And so how does that get resolved? And so one of the early questions that we had to answer as we tried to figure out how do we go about the school bond is what happens to that, and what's that long-term plan? And so early on, we'd always thought that there'd be interest in development of the property. Back to your earlier question, I did not think it would be me developing the property, but we had reached out, and we absolutely got interest back from developers that I had worked with on an engineering, from an engineering perspective, doing engineering design in the Des Moines area. And they said, yeah, that building is one that presents some appealing opportunities. And so we knew that
Yes.
that there is potential for it. And so that helped us at least early on to set the stage of, all right, let's move forward with the school project, and here's the concept out there. And eventually there was a developer, not me, who entered the equation and started to really explore what could happen with it. And so the story continues, but I'll hand it back to you.
Well, can you talk a little bit about the value of keeping such a building versus tearing it down? And like you said, it's close by, it's historic. Part of the Main Street, initiative here is historic preservation and economic development and community development through that. So speak a little bit to that and why that building was worth saving and repurposing.
Yeah, I think there is something special about the historic fabric of our community, of any community, but especially some of these instrumental buildings in a community, like a school in a small town. And so there's value in finding a way to preserve when it makes sense, right? When there is a present day purpose that's going to fit that building. One of the early questions we had to answer was, well, if it's good enough to turn into apartments, why wasn't it good enough to be a school building, right? And you look at the layout of that, it didn't work for present day education, but it presented a lot of opportunities for turning it into apartments. And so we saw it fit kind of the bigger story of what makes sense and the location of it and all of these reasons. But the other, I mean, when you look at it from the quality of the build, you can't build buildings like that anymore. I mean, when we're cutting through to go vertical with plumbing, water lines, things like that, I mean, there's some 12-inch concrete in that. This building was built extremely well, extremely sturdy. The masonry with it, the character, all of that. There's 17-foot ceilings, right? When you go through and try to create, if you were building 25 apartments today from scratch, I mean, it's not economically feasible to build a building like that. You can do 25 apartments, but the underlying structure isn't a century-plus structure like that is. And so it's... Go ahead.
I would almost, by today's standards or practices or the economy of things, one might describe that as overbuilt, even probably. Right?
The structure of it, absolutely overbuilt. The windows, all of these things. I mean, it's an awesome building. It's challenging to rehab a building like that. That's why these financial incentives that are out there, historic tax credits, things like that. That's why they exist, because there's a recognition that to do something like that, it's not cheap. But man, when it's done and when it's over with, like, you've got a building that's good for another 100 years because of that underlying structure, that underlying quality of the build out. And so it's going to be there. And that's the goal through this. And we've done a couple other buildings downtown, is that, it's a heavy lift here now in the present. But when you get that updated to present standards, these things are going to be around for a while.
Yeah, and that's great. It's like some old refrigerators that there's always still kicking. It's like they don't build them that way anymore, and it would feel like a crime to not keep this and reuse it. And we say that about a lot of these building renovations. We're giving them another 100 years because they've got such great start to them, and the structure has been there for over 100 years as is. So, with that being said, you've got a couple of structures there. You've got the school building, you've got the gym building, of much discussion, through this process. Can you talk a little bit about some of the decision making and what may or may not happen, or how it's happened so far, and just some of the thought process and logistics, the reality of the gymnasium factor?
Yeah. So easily the most common question we get is what's happening with the gymnasium. And so the gymnasium was built separately from the school. School was built in early 1920s. The gymnasium was finished in 1954, and different architect, different style, all of that. Awesome building. I love that gymnasium. Right? Playing basketball games there, or for me, more sitting during basketball games there, but
front row seat to watching games.
It was a fantastic seat. Yeah. No, it was it's an awesome building. And so when this whole idea first started, I was on the bandwagon, or I was probably leading the charge. No, this is a great building. This is what we need to do, something to incorporate this into it. And as that process played out, and first, I mean, the outreach to city, the outreach to schools, like who can utilize this building, and then is there a third party that can utilize this building, because it is a community asset, it is a valuable building. Well, as we started to dig into it, what we've realized is that it is economically very challenging, and that is because it's a big building. If you step back, the footprint of that building is bigger than the footprint of our community rec center. But functionally, a lot of that footprint is devoted to things like the upper story seating, to the auditorium stage, to the band room, to the locker rooms, to the concessions area. And all of a sudden, you have this awesome gym, but there's a lot that goes on around it. This gym floor is great, but there's so much that goes on around it. And so lots and lots of discussions and analyses and things, and eventually realized that for that to be incorporated into this, like the build out and converting the school building into apartments, it financially it tanked the project. Every different way we looked at it, whether it was a event center, whether it was still a gym that was rented out, like all these different ways, just financially it didn't work, and continued to look and tried to figure out ways for others to use it, and eventually said, all right, this is just something that, like, for the greater good, like, let's figure out a way to get the school done and convert it into apartments. Gymnasium isn't a fit. And so the original idea was the gymnasium would be demoed, right? And I shed my tears early on and said, all right, bigger picture, like there's value in keeping the school building, and then what can be done with where the gymnasium is, the surrounding areas. And that was a idea that was originally presented to the various groups that oversee this, historians, things like that. Initial guidance was that would be okay. As we started to work down that process further, eventually that was clarified and said, well, that gymnasium, because it's attached to the building, needs to be analyzed in its whole. And so lots and lots of conversations. This is all happening in the 2018, 19, 20 timeframe. Through lots of conversations with the State Historic Preservation Office, ultimately the National Park Service in D.C., the decision was made that for the project to use historic tax credits, which are the biggest part of the pie for how that thing happens, the gymnasium has to remain in place because it was part of the overall function of the building as a school. And I'm paraphrasing about 3 years of conversations here.
Yes.
And that was the decision, right? And so we had to figure out, like, is this still a project that is worth pursuing with that? And the great thing was that we figured out a path through this, right? Now, is it the ideal path from our perspective? No. But in any of these projects, it's never the perfect path, right? There's always going to be challenges that come up. And ultimately, the historic tax credits were an important enough project, and we want to work within the confines of that program. And so we said, all right, how do we figure this out? And so it's the upshot is that this was another unique way that the community at large stepped up to make this thing happen. And so the school district, very much to their credit, said, all right, like we get it. This is an important project. How does this thing get over the finish line still? Mm-hmm. And so the end result was the school district maintains that and owns that gymnasium still to this day. Property line was drawn between the two buildings, and the school building itself is now moved over and allowed for the development. The gymnasium has to stay in place for at least 5 years after the completion of the project, and then after that, there's more, I guess, freedom to approach whatever with that property. But in terms of the big picture, yeah, that's a very important part. We don't control the gym; the school district controls it. There's still people looking at it. There's still opportunities for that gymnasium, and so it's been a really unique approach. Community members stepped up to help make the project itself still viable, because with the original intent of looking out to the south and seeing potentially a park or something else like that went away, and now you're looking at the gymnasium, which is a unique, cool building in and of itself. But we found a way through it, and we think at the end of the day, it's still going to be a wow type of a project.
Absolutely, and that's great. Appreciate that perspective. I know that's been a point of conversation, and great to hear some kind of behind the scenes of how that conversation has looked. I also know that, as the community rec center, the community center looks to potentially expand its gym space, brought an architect in and had him do a quick walkthrough, and what would it take to make this a public space again? And it's $5 to $7 to $9 million, just to give folks a roundabout idea. And then you talk about the inefficiencies of running two spaces apart from each other and all those kind of things. So just a little insight, but hey, the future is unwritten on that building, but that does give folks some idea of why it's there still and what if we, I guess it's hard to know because technically it's a school district. So I was going to ask, do you foresee us seeing any bits of the, will we see the gym floor reimagined anywhere or anything like that and within the project?
I think there's certainly opportunity for that. Again, since it's still the district's property, ultimately that's going to be up to the district, up to the board. But historic preservation, right? It takes on a lot of different ways and a lot of different forms, and something like that. I think there's a lot of value to figuring out how to tell the story of that building, right?
Absolutely.
And whether it's the keeping of the gymnasium floor in some different format or something that can be done to still convey like that was an important building, that was a unique building, and to your point, right, doesn't have a fit today with the rec center and their potential expansion. Well, they're certainly looking at it, absolutely, as they should, as they need to, but end of the day, it also needs to make sense economically, and it's a tough structure to utilize.
Yes. All right. Well, I'm curious now about how, in a roundabout way, a project like this gets funded. So I'm not going to ask you to recite your entire pro forma on this, but give folks some insight to the different funding sources. You've mentioned historic tax credits as being a huge wedge of the pie, apple pie. But wondering what else you've used, how else have we, aside from, you collecting pop cans and putting your own dollars in here, what else has made this possible?
So this project is not possible without a fairly deep financing stack. And so historic tax credits, both at the state and the federal level, but then at the state level, there's also workforce housing tax credits. There's redevelopment tax credits, which can take the form of either a brownfield site or a grayfield site. In this case, we're doing a grayfield site, which just means a vacated property sitting vacant for multiple years. Excuse me. The city has been a huge part of the overall funding source, funding approach with contribution of TIF financing and then also tax abatement, and kind of a unique combination there. End of the day, the city is in for less than 10% of the total project, and that's as we've done other projects. Having the city there has been huge, but it also, we don't want to ask too much of the city. This was a unique one because we're taking a property that's never been on the tax roll and bringing it back to the tax roll. And so there's actually a nice incentive for the city to throw something behind this, because there's gonna be a payoff back to the city too, which is what we want, right? Let's bring more projects onto the property tax roll and find ways to create bigger opportunities down the road. And then there's a downtown housing grant that's being utilized. That was a program that was associated with some COVID funding. A lot of these programs were applied for back in the 2021 timeframe. And then the Iowa Finance Authority has a home loan program. Home acronym, home, I can't remember exactly what it stands for off the top of my head. And then conventional bank financing, Home State Bank has been a wonderful partner with this. And then finally, local investors. When we ran into some of the challenges with how the project had to come together and implementation, there was still a pretty sizable gap. And so local investors quietly stepping up in the background just to make sure this thing happens, because there's a big picture awareness. This is a really important project.
Nice. I love that. You get a lot of buy-in there, and it really does show it's sort of a put your money where your mouth is type of thing, and people showing that value in this project and what it means to the community, and that really underscores that. All right, so we've had a couple of kind of deeper, serious questions here, a little lighter hearted thing. So I'm curious along the lines of, as you're doing renovations and digging into things here, have you found anything surprising or anything kind of fun that you found within the building itself, or stuff that kind of made you smile, or aspects then we've got to save, this has got to be integrated into this space somehow, part of its history?
It's been fun to walk through a building that to me was middle school, right? And back then it felt kind of big, but I didn't realize how much was actually there, just kind of one layer away in terms of just the volume of this building, right? And so when we got onto and started to do the demo, especially on second floor, right, those ceilings were set at 10 feet, maybe 12 feet, which felt big. They're 17 feet tall, right? And the classrooms up on third floor, what was my library, again, that's about a 9-foot, 10-foot ceiling, and you could see it on the windows that they dropped that ceiling. This is back in the 70s, 80s when everything was really expensive, and all these ceilings were getting dropped, windows were getting infilled, but the ceiling ran into the halfway point on the window. Like, those are 13-foot tall windows. There's a 17-foot tall ceiling there. And so there's just this tremendous volume that tells the story of how these buildings were put together back in the 1920s. And these landmark type buildings are going to be there for generations to come. And so seeing some of just the sheer volume, for us, the one no-brainer for this project, the windows had to come back. And it's a big part of the project. It's what everybody notices right away from the outside when you're inside standing in one of those units. Again, like the amount of just light that comes in is awesome. And thankfully, within the confines of the historic program, we can still do high efficiency windows. So another question we get all the time, like what's it going to be like with those windows? Well, no, we'll have window coverings there, and they're high efficiency, all that fun stuff. But holy cow, they make it just feel big and grandiose in a good way. And so it's been fun to see some of that building character really get to come back like it originally was intended.
That's cool. So the windows I think that's a good point. It is the most obvious thing you see as you're coming by there. So that is essentially replica of the originals.
It
with
is
a modern, efficient take.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's in my opinion, when historic rehabilitation is done well, is you keep the historic character, but you bring some of the modern technology into it, right? So HVAC systems are going to be very modern, very high efficiency. Windows are going to have the right look, but also perform really high with high efficiency. And so it's this nice, I'll use an architect word, right? This juxtaposition of old historic meeting new modern day tech.
Awesome. All right. So you've mentioned there's 25 apartments coming in. Can you tell us a little bit about layout or configuration, bedroom maybe, or variety of sizes, and then tell us about the upcoming open house.
Yeah, so there's 25 apartments. Like you said, they range from studio apartments up to 3-bedroom apartments. The majority are 1 and 2 bedroom, but there's 4 3-bedroom units, 3 studio units. So there's a nice blend of everything. And the open house, the next open house, this will be our third and really probably our final open house that we hold during construction. We'll do a ribbon cutting and something once everything's done and open and ready for moving. But it's coming up on Saturday, June 13th, Saturday of Bell Tower Festival. From 12 to 3, we'll have the building open. People are welcome and encouraged to walk through and see what progress looks like. They'll see first floor is effectively complete, right? Appliances aren't in there yet, but finishes are there. They get to see the new flooring. They get to see new caseware cabinetry, light fixtures, things like that. And then they see the building kind of stage as you go up, right? So second floor, working on finishes. Third floor, there's still some drywall. That's a few places where drywall is being completed, but rough-ins are almost entirely done, and finishes are just about to start on third floor. So it's kind of fun to see how this thing stages out in construction too.
Yeah, very fun. One of my favorite things is, all of our former educators here or folks in the education field, I like to make the joke about, I don't know who benefits more from the retired teacher portal, if it's Deal's Orchard, the Maney Bell Tower, Midwest Mission now, and Jefferson Matters. We all really benefit from that. And it's really fun seeing these folks be back in this building and like, oh, we're going to live in so-and-so's classroom, or I taught over there, and like, I don't know if I want that. Just the history there. That doesn't come from new construction. Right. And just that added layer that added value is really awesome.
Every time we do an open house, we hear another story about someone's memory or what happened in this room, or who the teacher was in this room a couple generations ago, and the impact of that teacher. And so, it's fine. It's hard to find a building that has more memories in it than a school building.
Oh, totally. Yeah. All right. We're getting ready to wrap up here. So a couple of quick hitters. So the sentence here I just want you to finish this off. Okay. People will be most surprised by
the magnitude.
Right. Yes.
The size
All
of
right.
it.
The biggest challenge was...
I'm supposed to finish this as just a sentence and not a 5 minute.
Not a paragraph.
The biggest challenge ended up being timeline.
And you're
gonna let me expand on that?
On that note, you're so close to the finish line now. Your predicted timeline-ish.
Yeah, so timeline was a challenge because as we worked through all the various funding sources, there's a lot of nuances to each one. And so we eventually got everything aligned and hit go a year ago at this point on construction with, basically a year to get it done, which is an aggressive build out for this. Thankfully, amazing team that's there from all the way from architect through contractors, subcontractors, like a wonderful group of people. What was the question?
This is when we want to get an answer to.
Yeah.
It is what's your finish line?
Oh, finish line. Yeah. When is it done?
Yeah. When can people hopefully move in?
So we are tracking towards the construction substantial completion at the end of July. Now that is not. I realize that there's definitions are important here because that is the point then where we can start wrapping up punch lists. We can start getting appliances, window treatment, some of those other pieces in there. And so we are hoping for move-in come this fall, and we're still tracking toward that. You'll notice that I never give definitives because I've done enough construction to know that there's things that happen, right? But the team has been just incredible in knocking out challenge after challenge and keeping a very aggressive timeline. And so it's been fun to be around. It's been stressful to be around, certainly. But it's been a lot of fun to see it come together.
So hopeful fall move in, and luckily for you, fall is very quiet and boring, and you have
why not?
Plenty of time in the fall. Last note: when people walk through the doors, you hope they feel
pride. Community pride.
Love that. That's awesome. And 25 apartments. Do you have? What's the interest been like?
Interest has been fantastic. We've had multiple people who have been not only out of Jefferson but out of Iowa for years, decades, who are looking for what's going to be their retirement spot, and they've been tracking this project. They've reached out and said, "Hey, like I love what's happening in the community, and I've just been looking for a spot to come back to. Like, is this available?" And I said, "Yes, it is." And so, anecdotally, we've had several like that. A lot of local individuals who are on they've reached the empty nester stage, tired of the maintenance that comes with a lawn and snow removal and all of that of owning a home, but still want to be a part of the community. Back to the importance of community, the uniqueness of Jefferson, and so lots of interest in that on that front, and also young professionals. Like, they want to come here, or they just got a job in the school system or whatever it might be, who've expressed interest. And we always thought that would be kind of our two most likely target markets, right? Is empty nesters who want to stay here, young professionals who want to come in. And so, yes, lots of interest with it. And We're really excited to be able to get to the point where people can start actually claiming their units. I know there is already basically a priority list of who gets the first call once we get the final approvals for leasing these things up.
Wow, and I gather there's a couple former education field folks who you're getting to turn the tables on with, who you get to say who and when and what. Then that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's they're very excited. We're all very excited to get to that point of to bring life back into this building and to have its next chapter begin.
Well, to that point of who you said there's interest in. Some folks think Jefferson's a retirement community, and we're certainly trying to buck that reputation or that mindset. And we know, as you mentioned, a fantastic place to raise a family and young professionals, and reimagining what rural America looks like and being a leader in that. So this project exemplifies that, I would say, from a homegrown kid and coming full circle to all this. And so thanks for giving us this, behind the scenes look at this, some insights, and hope to see folks coming to your open house at Bell Tower Festival on that Saturday again. And tell us the time once more.
It'll be from 12 to 3.
12 to 3.
Roughly lining up with the end of the parade.
Excellent.
Right? So we'll be there a little before that. But,
after the parade, walk over, do a walkthrough, check that out. Excellent. So what we want you to do then is hit up a couple things. Like and follow this video in our YouTube and social media channels so you can know when these things are coming. That helps support these things. And you can hit up Mahaney Bell Towers website, Jefferson Matters website, Deals Orchards website. We'll give you guys a little love here. And Chris, want to thank you for giving us some insight on the Jeffersonian. And we really appreciate a little extra insight on why Chris Deal and the Jeffersonian matter to Jefferson. See you next time.